talk about complementary and supplementary angles when it has to do with radian measure. You already know and are familiar with these two terms from geometry. The first one is complementary. And in geometry, you said two complementary angles have a sum of 90 degrees. And again, it can only be two angles. So, complementary angles could be like a 40-degree angle and a 50-degree angle because they would add up to 90. And supplementary angles are the sum of two angles that are 180 degrees. So complementary is 90 and supplementary is 180. But when we talk about radian measure, we have to convert that. So if we think about our circle, this is 0, this is pi for 180, and this then would be pi over 2 because 90 is half of 180. So when we're talking about complementary angles, we're talking about the sum of two angles whose sum is pi over 2. They have to add together to be 90 degrees or pi over 2. And then supplementary, their sum would be not only 180, but they could be pi. So let's think about how we would find that. If I told you that we were talking about a 20-degree angle, and I asked you to find that angle's complement, you would say 70. And the reason you would say 70 is because you knew that 20 plus something had to be 90. And so in your head, what you really did was 90 minus 20 and knew that that angle had to be 70. We'll do the same thing with complementary. Let's start with an angle of 2 pi over 5. And let's first find the complementary angle to that. So I know that this angle plus something has to be pi over 2. So to find that complementary angle, I'm going to do pi over 2, subtract 2 pi over 5. And remember, when we deal with fractions, we always have to have a common denominator. So it's going to be over 10 over 10. So this would be 5 pi, and this would be 4 pi. So 5 pi over 10 minus 4 pi over 10 is just 1 pi over 10. So the complementary angle to 2 pi over 5 is pi over 10. Let's think about the supplementary angle to 2 pi over 10. Or excuse me, 2 pi over 5. I know that 2 pi over 5 plus something gives me pi. This might be easier for you to think about in your head. 2 pi over 5 plus something pi over 5 would need to give me 5 pi over 5. But I'm going to go ahead and do the subtraction thing. Pi minus 2 pi over 5. I need to get a common denominator. So I'm going to make this over 5. So that would have to be 5 pi over 5. So 5 pi over 5 minus 2 pi over 5 is 3 pi over 5. So 3 pi over 5 and 2 pi over 5 would be supplementary angles.